Welcome to the Technical Solutions for a Skill-Based Future panel. I am Jeanne Kitchens, a Chief Technology Services Officer with Credential Engine. Thank you for joining us. It feels like we're in a sort of technology paradise where we have an endless array of tech for everyday life. However, on one hand, we have self-driving cars and we can book pleasure trips apparently to space. On the other hand, we have gaps in learning and in hiring that make it seem unrealistic to many people to get skills in equitable education and career pathways. We're all maneuvering our way through technical specifications and solutions for human-centered approaches that will advance the vision for a skill-based future. So our panel is well equipped to talk about the technologies that are making a difference now and what the technologies of the future will need to look like to address the challenges in our talent ecosystem. They are going to begin by telling a story. The story is going to be about Sandra, who is going to begin her journey in high school and navigate through career-long education and career pathways. Each one of our panel members will make a short introduction as they cover a part of Sandra's journey. And I'll turn it over to Kerri to start that journey.
Thanks, Jeanne. So hi, everyone. My name is Kerri Lemoy, and I'm the Director of Digital Credentials Research and Innovation at Concentric. So in this role, I am both a technologist and a researcher. My team focuses on the Badger platform, and this is where learners can receive and share skills-based credentials and also be able to visualize and connect to learning opportunities using our Pathways tool. So Badger issues open badges and is a dedicated proponent and leader in the development of open standards like open badges. And we're also leading the development of aligning open badges with the W3C verifiable credential standard. So what I will tell you a little bit about is how all of that lines up with the story of Sandra. So what we know is that the story of Sandra isn't an uncommon one. And here's sort of an example of how it might go. Right? Sandra was in high school, and she may have participated in an after-school program where she earned badges for learning how to code. And she thinks, well, hey, I really like this, so maybe I could get a job doing this kind of work. So then on Badger, she looks around and she sees like, oh, there's these pathways. These pathways show me that like there's ways to do this, and I could maybe take a year-long online program in cybersecurity and lead to some kind of work in information systems security. So the first course she ends up taking is the one that is showing on the screen now. And it's a business continuity and disaster recovery prep course. And in this course, she learns how to conduct a business impact analysis, assess risks, develop policies and procedures, and implement a plan. And you can see in here, so this is what it would look like on Badger. And in here, you can see that there's a list of skills that would display. And some of these skills are aligned with this particular course are from the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, which is also called NICE. Most people will refer to it as NICE. That's what they mean. And they're referring to their cybersecurity workforce framework, which can also be found in the CTDL registry, which I think Deb is going to talk more about in a little while. So Badger provides tools where issuers can add these skills from frameworks like this, including MC, and even those that use the new Osmond tool. And you'll see, you can zoom in a little bit, Jeanne, on the code-ish looking area there. This is what open badges look like underneath the hood. Right? And the spec has metadata properties that align these skill alignments to badges. And open badges uses linked data, which makes the credentials interoperable amongst systems. But then the power of interoperability is increased as these skill frameworks are reused amongst the badges where the common language can be shared. And this is especially powerful when the skills are also available in linked data formats. And this is how machines read the data. There are properties that describe what they are and there are values of those properties. And then going back to Sandy, well, Sandra, I guess my stepsister's name is Sandra, so I'm going to say Sandy. She will be able to use her credentials to prove all of her certifications, and also that she's learned these very distinct skills. And then maybe later on, she might decide to switch careers, and she might find that these skills are still applicable. And at Badger, we've also been thinking about how we can make these single skill achievements even more powerful, and then more evidence of pathways and badges. And if there's time later on, I'd like to explain a little bit about the Open Badges 3.0 proposal, where we're suggesting that single skill assertions can be even a more direct and efficient way to demonstrate and attain skills. And that's what I have.
Gwen.
Thanks, Jeanne. Gwen Britton. I am the the Vice President for Product Strategy at Southern New Hampshire University, and we're really focusing on how to help learners transform their lives in multiple different ways by creating different pathways that are going to lead them to whatever that goal is that they have. So here, what you're looking at is Sandra has already earned a bunch of different badges that have all kinds of skills that are possibly transferable to Southern New Hampshire University and stackable into a degree program. So what you're looking at right now is this is an entry inside of the Credential Engine. Over on the left-hand side shows you the different competencies and the skills that the learner is able to acquire once they've acquired. So in the top, you see once they've acquired those 3 skills, that lends itself to a course in cross-platform technologies. And then you can see another course that's underneath of that, which is a computing as a service. Competencies feed into both of those courses. If a learner achieves success in both of those 2 courses, they then get the credential in computer architectures. That computer architectures is a stackable credential that would actually stack into a degree program. Now, behind the scenes, what this looks like, which is really, really helpful to learners, and it's also helpful to other enterprises and institutions, is what I call the alignment magic behind the scenes. Over on the left-hand side, you can see our Bachelor of Science in Information Technologies has connections to multiple different things that live inside the Credential Engine. One of them is a badge pathway in data management. Another one shows you just specifically those information technology competencies live inside of our bachelor's degree. And then there's also a computer science certificate that aligns to many of those competencies as well. If you slide to the right, what we've done is we've actually taken the NICE cybersecurity workforce framework skills and we've aligned them to the competencies that are inside of a course. You'll see 3 separate competencies here and what those alignments from the NICE framework are, whether they're broad alignment, exact alignment, narrow alignment, etc. But it does show you the exact connection between the NICE cybersecurity framework and the competencies within a course inside that competency framework. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you can see these are the different competency frameworks that have been aligned directly to these competencies inside of the Credential Engine. So there's the 4 different competency frameworks from NICE. This image doesn't show, but we've also aligned this to multiple other frameworks. That includes being able to align to other academic institution frameworks, having the ability to align to certification exams, having the ability to align to workforce skills that might fit this credential, which would then allow a learner to actually surface all of those different skills and competencies that they could acquire in multiple different ways. So at the end of the day, Sandra can see she got those credentials, while she was in high school, collected some badges. She was able to actually get another credential as part of her earning and learning on her way toward a bachelor's degree and a bigger job, more opportunity. So there you go.
Reyhan, take it away.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Reyhan Jhaver. I'm Senior Director of Product Strategy here at Workday, focused all on our talent and skills products. So Workday Focus has been focused on skills since 2014, building our own ontology and intelligence platform around skills, really driving the new way of work and the future of work for our customers. And we've seen this play out in a number of different ways with technology increasing and the skills gap widening. Organizations are really trying to figure out how do they leverage skills and how do they take a more skills-based approach to hiring sourcing and acquiring talent to reskilling and upskilling and providing pathways of career opportunities for their workers when they come into the organization. And so with Workday, it really comes down to all of the data that really drives that skills-based people strategy of all the different data elements that exist in Workday. And for Sandra, it starts at when she is potentially looking for an opportunity as a new hire in an organization. We look at her data, all of the data that's on her resume, understand what skills and capabilities she may have, and really start to offer suggestions and really personalize what potential roles may be available to her as she looks to apply to join an organization. Once she goes through the process of hiring and being recruited in, now she's a new employee. And now it's really a focus on how do we upskill and reskill and really grow her career within the organization. So as she continues to gain experiences, all of that information is tracked. We're able to understand the skills that she may have gained through those experiences, what skills she may have gained through learning and development opportunities or potential experiential opportunities such as gigs where she can grow her skill sets. All of these combine into an overall capacity and picture of Sandra's development and skills and really drives personalized and more direct targeted recommendations to really help her upskill and figure out new pathways within the organization to grow and advance her career. And so it really comes down to having that solid and core foundation around what are all the things that Sandra has on her profile or from her potential CV. How do we use that information to build that true data foundation for our skills in machine learning? And then how do we personalize the recommendations to help her grow and develop her career in context as she's looking at where can she go, how can she grow, and really understand how she can develop herself within the organization that she is in.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Robby Robson, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Eduworks Corporation. I'm also the principal investigator on a National Science Foundation project called SkillSync, which is part of what's called a Convergence Accelerator program on the future of work at the human technology frontier. So Sandra is in the workforce, and as it turns out, there's a lot of people coming into cybersecurity, and her employer really needs some cybersecurity leaders. So the company that she works for is looking for ways to upskill their workers. And when they do that, they'd like to connect to local educational institutions, to their continuing education and professional development organizations, and communicate with them and let them know what kind of skills they need, and to get some proposals back from those organizations to give their workers those skills. So this is what SkillSync does. SkillSync is a application. There's a lot of AI in the background. It's looking at job descriptions and extracting skills from them. And it is also looking at course descriptions and extracting and aligning skills requests with that. So that's what SkillSync does. And it is underneath that, the skills themselves are stored in a system called the Competency and Skill System, which is also what is storing the competency frameworks within the Credential Engine. So this is what we're doing. And this is part of a slightly larger program, if you go on to the next thing, which is we're working with several other of the projects here to really create support for what we call the talent ecosystem. So there's a project that is involved not only us, but also some others who are working in one case on helping people with autism spectrum disorder get into the workforce and helping employers understand the value of those, and another for first responders who are training them with a sort of modern technology in VR and exoskeletons. And we are trying to connect this entire ecosystem. So I won't go on, we'll go on to the next one in a minute, but if we look at it as follows, there's sort of the skill-based workers profiles. There's profiles of what people know and can do. That's been mentioned quite a bit throughout the Open Skills Network presentations. There's skill-based credentials that match up to that. There's skill-based job profiles, the jobs that are required, and there's skill-based training profiles, what training can offer. And with this infrastructure, we're connecting all of these so that Sandra can not only get the skills she needs, but her employer can offer the jobs that require those skills If she needs training, they can get them. People can enter the workforce and understand what they need as well.
Take it away, Deb.
Okay, so my name is Deb Everhart. I'm Chief Strategy Officer at Credential Engine. And Credential Engine is a nonprofit, and we support and provide services around the Credential Transparency Description Language, which is an openly licensed schema for connecting all of these different types of linked data. And the CTDL, the Credential Transparency Description Language, it supports over 750 different linked open data terms. And so that can be not only the structure for rich skills descriptors, but also connect credentials, competencies, skills, courses, programs, pathways, quality assurance, occupations, jobs, across this whole spectrum. We also support the open source technologies for the credential registry, which is a way for anyone to be able to publish all of this data so that others can connect to it as linked open information on the web. So what you're seeing here is really sort of this exploding knowledge graph, which is what the CTDL enables us to do. And as Sandra follows her pathways, and she's gaining all these skills along the way, and she's interacting with many different providers of various sorts, many different technology systems, what's going to tie all this together? Well, it's the linked open data that can tie it all together. Because all of these different systems and processes across Sandra's learning journey, they can connect via this data that's both human readable and machine readable. When Kerri showed you the badge, you saw the human picture of it, but then you also saw that snippet of the data that's inside it. And so this data can provide like a sort of a GPS-like guidance, because it's using really those same web technologies that you're familiar with, that you get like layers in a map, right? You'll get more information about your routes and your locations along your map. It's actually literally the same technology, but this is the data for all different types of credentials and skills. So no matter where Sandra goes, these open data networks are going to help her along the way. And the rich skills descriptors have this information that backs up her skills. It's not just a skill statement, but it's all of this rich data connected to it. And this is important because when you think about it, these skills that she's achieved, they might have been defined and they might have been validated by a variety of different organizations, educators, employers, government agencies, technology solution providers, community organizations, and a lot more. But all of those different skills can be compatible and connected because they use these same linked open data schemas. So we're really excited to be supporting this work, and we hope you have a lot of questions, and that's the discussion that we're going to get into now.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you, everyone. That was great. And you can see here kind of the big picture, that the story of Sandra, and how having that story helps us imagine this perfect talent ecosystem that we're all working together to accomplish. So now let's take some questions from the audience via the chat. And I have a few questions ready to get us started. Is there anything in the chat that you would like to share? Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and ask Gwen a question. Okay, Gwen, technology solutions have to work for people. What are the human factors that are pushing colleges and university towards skill-based solutions?
Oh, excellent question. Well, employers are really seeking authentic applied skills, think things that are technical in nature. Not only that, but also the ability to apply different soft skills, problem solving, critical thinking, ethical behavior, et cetera. Because of that, learners are also now looking for shorter bursts of learning with a higher ROI for them and the ability to directly apply those acquired skills and competencies to different goals, which in many cases is slightly different lens, for an institution of higher ed, because in days past, higher ed offered up degree programs and only degree programs. But as you start to look at the landscape out there now, there are micro-credentials, micro-bachelors, mini-masters, you name it. All of those are built because there are learners out there that are looking for that next thing that's going to get them to whatever that next level is.
Well, that's a really good point. With so many different types of credentials, it may seem a little murky, but yet really what you're saying is those are really providing those on-ramps for this whole lifelong or career-long cycle of learning. And it's important to have the data about that and to carry that data with you. Thank you. And if there's any questions, go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to add, I think one of the things that's really exciting about this work is that it can give people, individuals, new tools to be able to understand and articulate their own competencies, right? Put it in the hands of people. Deliver these skills to people in badges and other types of digital credentials, but make sure they all follow these open standards so that when I have these skills, I know not only what they mean, but also everything that they're connected to in terms of other opportunities.
Great. Thanks for that, Deb. Any other panelists want to add anything? If not, I'm going to move on to a question for Robby. Robby, tell us about the challenges that you and your customers face with realizing the skill-based vision for the future.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. Also, I just wanted to add, my own background. I was actually put in charge of introducing what was at the time was called outcomes-based education in the late 90s at a university, and which was an abject failure. There's and so it's really, really gratifying to see what's going on now. And what we've discovered is that in our work is we're trying to connect companies to colleges, and we spent a lot of time talking to people from HR departments, talent managers, as well as administrators in continuing education departments. And there's just a huge number of disconnects. It's sort of like, one is from Venus and one is from Mars. And there's a lot of what we've done has been, we have a lot of technology under the hood. We have, AI stuff. We're looking at language models. We're trying to align things. But really, the problems are business problems. There's colleges, continuing education departments are somewhat challenged by selling to companies. Colleges, we've discovered, and Jeanne's been involved in this project, the Credential Engine has. One of the things we discovered was we wanted to implement back-end technology, but their course catalogs are on hard disks and hard drives, and that makes it rather hard to. Reyhan's from Workday, and there's a whole infrastructure in companies, and they're just lacking in a lot of places. So I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is that the basic back-end infrastructure for a lot of these things aren't there, and the basic business models aren't there either. And so as we move on, we should not forget that this isn't simply about the interoperable data, but it's also about connecting people in a way that is, we talk about socio-technological systems, and that this is definitely one of them. And we need to really worry about how people are going to get their courses advertised, how they're going to get the skills out there, et cetera. There are a lot of these problems that we need to work on.
Really good points, Robby. Would anybody else like to add to what Robby just
Well, I would be interested in Reyhan's perspective on this, but let me say a word about technology in general, because I have an ed tech strategy background, and I think that it's critical that we see technology providers helping step into this gap, the gap that Robby's describing, but also in general, ways to make this work more scalable. Because people need to embed these skills-based processes in their existing workflows. You can't expect a hiring manager, especially a small company, to go out and do something completely different in order to do like skills-based job descriptions. They have to be embedded in the technologies that these people are already using in their work and education roles.
Yeah, and this is Reyhan here. I mean, we see that on the obviously with our customers, right? Is how do they start to your point, Deb, being able to transition to that model of embedding skills at the forefront of how they think about all of their talent processes, right? I know we talk a lot about internal mobility as being more skills based. How do you look at resource allocation? How do you think about how you plan for your resources in the future? And how do you think about that more through the lens of skills, even from a performance management and even potentially compensation management perspective? How does skills really start to kind of be top of mind as to how they think about their how they want to evolve their processes? And what we find with our customers is everyone's at different stages of the spectrum, right? Some have been doing this for a while, so they're a little bit more sort of at the forefront of thinking about how do they infuse skills through that point, or from the other side of it, for those customers who are just starting out, where do they start? Where do they begin? Mm-hmm. Right. And so we spend a lot of time with our customers in that sense of, with all the stuff that we have, here's a good place to start to get your feet wet, then start to work with those stakeholders across different groups to start to infuse skills throughout the life cycle of an employee when they're in your organization.
Well, and that was a perfect segue, Reyhan, to the question I was going to ask you, and how do you help employers go to this skill-based strategy and get to that kind of agile formula where internal mobility is at the forefront. And that's so beneficial in this story of Sandra. It's very beneficial to Sandra and the company to have that kind of an attitude and culture in the company and that data behind it to back it up.
Yeah, and that's a great question. You're right. It's a great segue. Part of what we do is, when we work with our customers on this, we call it sort of our transformation journey, right? And so it first starts with building a solid data foundation, because in order to figure out, as an organization, where do you need to potentially build that expertise internally and offer opportunities for mobility and, different experiences to grow skills, versus some parts of the organization, there are people do not have the skills that you're looking for internally. So how do you make those potentially hiring strategies for external recruiting more robust? Or where do you need to potentially move resources around? And we saw this a lot last year with the pandemic, as companies were scrambling to figure out, some parts of the business were in depressed demand. Other parts of their business was in surge demand, and they were all on hiring freezes, right? They couldn't hire. So how do you leverage the people that you have internally more effectively? And it all starts with that core data foundation, right? Understanding what actually you have today outside of their current job description. What other skills do they have? And it really comes to really understanding that more effectively, and then understanding what do you need? So we look at this as a supply and demand problem. What is my supply of skills versus what is the demand? And so a lot of times we tell our customers, like, let's start making sure that before you start putting all of these different processes in place, let's help you get the right data in, right? Let's help you get the right information about your people and the needs of the organization. And then you can start to institute, understand that through obviously different analytics and reporting capabilities, but then start to really institute the plans around, should you build that expertise? Should you hire externally? Should you move people around and redeploy people to really have, and then put those plans into place? And so we kind of look at this as sort of a step-by-step process where every part of the journey that a customer goes through in transforming to this model, they're going to put stuff in place, they'll iterate on it, and we're kind of with them all along the way, right?
Right. And kind of that's what we're really looking at here, is that kind of iterating and to solve all of these challenges that, the panel has brought up, and offering parts of that solution for the ecosystem. And Kerri, I have a question for you. When you were talking about badging in particular, I know that is your background and your passion. What are some examples of the technical standards and specifications that are needed and are in process now to enable this skill-based future that we're envisioning?
Sure. So part of the work that my team is focused on right now is to make it possible for learners to be able to participate in the labor market using credentials that clearly and verifiably communicate and demonstrate their skills and achievements. So we're aiming to do this by giving learners tools that give them persistent access to their data for as long as they need it, ensure that the data is trustworthy, and make it possible to bundle up and share their skills and their achievements from, I think people today have been calling them learner wallet apps or digital apps. And it's very important that people have access to this data and they're able to share it. And that it's imperative, really, they have this immediate access so that they can have data that's verifiable without relying on their past credential issuers who may not be around to make this data available, right? And if we think we can make this work, then it would drastically reduce barriers to opportunities. So some of the ways that we've been working on this is we proposed to the IMS global members to approve aligning open badges with something called the W3C Verifiable Credentials Data Model. And how this works is that open badges provides the rich data, right, and the skills and the achievements. And then the verifiable credentials data model, it proves like cryptographically that the learners can are the recipient of their credential, the issuers, the organization that issued it, and then it hasn't changed. And by combining these, we actually can put more trust in these credentials so that once we have this understanding in place, that we also know that it's verifiable and understandable from a trustworthy perspective.
Oh, that's great. And I think that is a huge topic, learner and employment records, and for the learners to be able to have those to manage that information and use it to their benefit, as opposed to how it currently is, where they really don't have any control of that information.
That's true. Jeanne, sorry, one other quick thing I wanted to mention is one other thing we are trying to work on with this proposal is actually something smaller than badges. And I think folks here might be interested in it. It's called a single skill assertion, which would work like open badges, but instead of like having this badge information, it would just point directly to these common skill definitions that are out in the world. And we think that's going to be a very powerful piece to verifying skills and communicating skills. So keep an eye out on that.
Yeah, definitely. Would any of the other panel members like to add to what Kerri had to say?
I'd like to comment on that. And Kerri, it's so great to be on a panel with you because we've been working together in the open badges work for a long time. So wonderful to see this coming together. I think maybe people could benefit from just kind of a simple nuts and bolts description of how this works. So Jeanne, if you go back to that badge slide, any digital credential can have in it, go to the one that's about the specific badge. Any digital credential can have within it links to other data via this alignments field. It might be called something different, but basically what it does is it lets a digital credential point out to other information. So what Kerri was just describing was talking about the delivery method of this badge being verifiable. And if you put it on a distributed ledger or blockchain or some other durable technology, also verified in a durable way beyond whatever is the lifespan of the credential issuer, right? So those things are important. And then, you're not going to put the whole world, you remember that graphic I had of that knowledge graph of all this data, you're not going to put the whole world of data inside the badge, right? So you use the alignment field to basically go out to that, that knowledge graph of data. And it's important to note that you can do that in a way that is literally just a web link, right? So the person who achieved that badge clicks on that link, they go out and they can see a whole bunch of other information about that skill or that credential or whatever the alignment, and there can be multiple alignments like you see in that badge. And so the person can see it, but what's even more powerful is that that is an information link. So systems can take, say I've accumulated, 145 badges over the last part of my learning and work journey. A system can look at all of those read all of that data, have a much better systems understanding of who I am to help me do things with that data. So this is one of the reasons why we really need full ecosystems around these different tools, because no single piece is going to solve all of those use cases.
Jeannie, there are a whole bunch of questions that have come up in the chat.
Oh, great.
And I thought we should maybe address some of those.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
That would be great.
So I don't know if you can see them, but I think the first one was from Kelly Jackson asking, are there any organizations ranking or sharing evaluations of the best places for students to earn online credentials? And there's some other question. I'm just reading a few of them. There's one about being curious what strategies are most successful in maximizing employer engagement. Another one if there's interest in the military, et cetera. So if you can see those, and maybe we can address some of those.
Okay, yes, I cannot see those. So can we go ahead and just grab one of those? Just start, see, we have a few minutes left. We might even be able to answer all of them. Can you go ahead and pull up one of those?
Grab the one about the military, because
yeah, that's a great one.
We work with the military. The answer
is
yes. We're working extensively. Of course, the military itself has sort of these, if you would, skills and competency frameworks of occupational specialties and rates and all of these things. But we're working with them at a much finer level. A big challenge there, which doesn't come up in higher education, at least not very much, is that the learning there is experiential, and there the kinds of skills and competencies and the way that training is done is very different, and so it is a different kind of a workplace environment, if you would. There's also efforts that Jeanne and others have been involved in making sure that skills transfer out of the military into the civilian arena, which is extremely important. And there are maps and alignments and crosswalking that goes on in those areas. So the short answer is yes. That was the longer answer.
Yeah, the thing about the military branches is they're so structured in terms of the occupations, in terms of the actual jobs and how you move through those jobs and the skills that you have to have in order to move through them. So in a sense, it almost makes it easier on the data side to be able to do that, whereas in the private sector, there tends to be that is not as transparent as probably as structured in terms of you have to do this before you can do that to move up a career ladder. So thank you for that, Robby. And can one of the panel members go ahead and grab one of the other questions?
Yeah, I'll take one that Kelly just put in here. It's from Jeff Johnson. And he asks, how are you determining a skill's durability or needed life cycle? With skills evolving or life cycles changing so quickly based on market industry changes, how are educators adjusting curriculum to account for the amount to invest in skills for longer and shorter terms? From the tech perspective, I'll use that as an example. There are some larger competencies that don't necessarily change, but the skills, tasks, knowledge, and abilities underneath of those competencies are the ones that are changing much more frequently, right? I think in terms of, I can talk about having competence in the area of operating systems, and back in the day, an operating system might have been, Windows 3.12, and now it's Windows 752. I don't even know what level we're at now. So being able to ensure you still have those overarching competency areas defined so that you can quickly adjust to whatever the changing technology and practices, et cetera, underneath, set up using this kind of a skills taxonomy makes it way easier and faster to keep track of what that life cycle is. The key there, though, is without a underlying data structure with the skills taxonomy and having the ability to tag the content that you have in a course and or the assessments, it makes it much more difficult to swap those out and put something new in. Otherwise, you might have to wait, next year for the next governance cycle, for the next person that can come in that actually knows what that new stuff is, makes it really, really difficult.
Yeah, also I'll add to that the labor market information companies and places like EMSI and Burning Glass, et cetera, are, sort of constantly tracking that. We in our own project are mining, if you would, the job postings from state workforce agencies to try to detect sort of those changes and, of course, make those available for colleges in particular and companies as well to see what those are and react accordingly.
Thank you for that, Gwen and Robby. Do we have time for one more, or are we at close? Kelly, are you?
You can do one more.
One more? Great. Does somebody want to grab one more? I did hear a question about credentials. Is that something, Deb, that you might want to grab? Or
yeah, I can be quick about it. So it's really about ranking, and I don't really want to focus on that word. It's more. Let me transition this to talk about how do you know what's quality? How do you know what's relevant? How do you know what's valuable for me? Right. And so there can be actually structured data around return on investment, employment outcomes. What are the formal quality assurance recognition of this credential or competency, and also the informal in the form of, who's it recognized by? Is it recognized by Boeing? Is it recognized by the Department of Defense? And so if we think of having more and more of this structured metadata to describe many different things about credentials and competencies and pathways, then you can see which parts of that are relevant for the decision a person or a company or an educator is trying to make to make those decisions.
thank you, Deb. And of course, that's what the credential transparency description language is all about.
That's right.
All right. So unless we can squeeze one more question in, I think we're about out of time. And it sounds as though we're going to go ahead and conclude. I want to thank all of the panelists for their wonderful story and the work that all of you are doing to move along with the skill-based future, and to everyone who participated today that's also playing a critical role in this talent ecosystem. You can reach out to any of the panelists with questions, so feel free to do so. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.